Now here I've summarized the energetics of the ethylene 1,3-butadiene and 1,3,5-hexatriene pi systems. This is ethylene, pi 1 and pi 2. This is butadiene, and this is the hexatriene, 6 MOs. In each case, the bonding orbitals are filled and there are no electrons in the antibonding orbitals. The highest energy orbital that contains electrons is called the highest occupied molecular orbital. And each of these systems has the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. And when you take a look at the picture that we have here, you can understand why conjugated dienes and trienes are more stable than simple isolated alkenes. Because notice that as we add molecular orbitals, the energetics of the most stable orbital move down, so that we have electron density in lower energy and then even lower energy molecular orbitals for the diene and the triene. So this explains why conjugated pi systems are more stable than having isolated multiple double bonds. I told you that one of the flaws of our overlapping atomic p orbital theory for pi bonds is the inability to explain why conjugated pi bonds are more stable. And here it is. MO theory makes it very clear. And finally, there was one other failure that we have to address, and that is the inability to understand why alkenes absorb UV and visible light. Take a look at this. The absorption of light by a pi system is a result of exciting an electron from the highest occupied molecular orbital to the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. So literally, we move an electron from the lower orbital to a higher energy orbital by the absorption of light. And the same thing would happen with the diene, and the same thing would happen with the triene. As light is absorbed, an electron is promoted to a higher energy level, the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital. The difference in the energies between the HOMO and the LUMO define exactly the wavelength of light needed to make this transition happen. And look at the energy gaps. For the alkene, there's a much larger energy gap between the HOMO and the LUMO than there is for the diene. And there's even a smaller energy gap for the triene. So we would predict, and we actually observe, that it takes less energy to excite butadiene than ethylene. And it takes less energy to excite 1,3-hexatriene than butadiene. This not only explains why alkenes absorb UV or visible light, but it also explains why conjugated alkenes absorb at longer wavelengths. And the more conjugation we have, the longer it is. Now it turns out that this has a very important and interesting application. Down the road, when we get a chance to talk about the chemistry associated with vision, it turns out that we have to have extensive conjugation to absorb in the visible light range, which is required for vision. And it is an extended conjugated pi system with a much smaller energy gap because of the conjugation that is involved in absorbing light to initiate the chemical process that's involved in vision. So this is all very interesting, and the MO theory explains why conjugated pi systems are more stable, and it also explains why they absorb light and why conjugated pi systems absorb light at longer wavelengths.